Hi everyone and welcome back to the Message Marketing Pod. I'm your host Christopher Meloti from Meloti Media and we have a really special episode today. I am sitting with Miss Arabella Macpherson from Resonate Comms. So Arabella and I met a couple of weeks ago at a conference, and Arabella is not only a lovely human being, but she is a specialist in communications and helping businesses and even people being able to get confident around their communications. And I think that this is something that it's close to my heart as well, being in branding and copywriting. And even though it's like the other side of the coin, I think that this would be a great conversation to have. For everyone listening, you're going to get a lot out of this episode. So Arabella, I will let you do your own introduction as well. And then
Will
I'm
you now?
you. Yes. For everyone listening, I've just thrown Arabella completely in the deep end.
Putting me on the spot. So I've been coaching now 16 years. I used to be an actress and opera singer before that. And then I came back. Didn't you not know that? Yeah. So I came back from New York and I found an ad in the newspaper, because that's how you found jobs back then, for a corporate voice coach. I rang up the phone number. The person on the other end of the line was slurring. I thought this will be easy. He can't even speak. And then I turned up and there was a wall of his books, DVDs and CDs. And he turned out to be one of the best presentation and sales coaches in Australia and the US. But he had Parkinson's disease. So
wow.
My grandfather passed away from Parkinson's. So I understood. And very quickly we started working together. And then I coached with other coaches and coached Nestle and Fairfax and Microsoft in 2-day workshops on high impact presenting and influence. And then I went out on my own in 2011 and have since worked with CEOs, execs, and senior leadership teams here in Australia, Asia, the UK, and US. It's been a bit of a journey.
And this is what I want to talk about today. In today's world of business, not just marketing, but business, how important are communications? Now, I'll throw you in a second, but like just to set the scene is today, especially in today's world of digital and AI and people being online, and it's just things evolving so fast. What I'm finding is people are starting to lose touch with the importance of communication. And the fact is that communication is one of the most important things we need as humans, because if we can't get our point across, then what are we doing here? And this is something that, Arabella, I'm sure this is speaking right to your heart here. What are your thoughts? What are you seeing out there? Just throw out.
Well, it is an interesting thing. And what I often say to people is, if you lived in a cave on a mountain somewhere in a very remote area, which some people do, then you wouldn't need to interact with anyone else. But most of us are dealing with multiple people all day long. And whether that be in our personal sphere or in the work sphere, and most of those people will have completely different personality styles to you. They'll have different communication preferences. They'll be under different levels of pressure. So they're not in okay space, which is a body of psychology. We say that two people can only communicate when they're both in okay space. As soon as one person goes into distress, they attack, they blame, or they shut down, and that other person will quickly follow. So most of the time, you're not only dealing with people who have completely different personality styles, they're under pressure and they've got different agendas to you. And so the fact that we can communicate at all is pretty impressive.
Right.
But we are reliant on communication in order to get what we need, whether it's to reach our business goals or to be able to help others, or whatever we're doing, we're interacting with people. And it doesn't help if you're not practiced in doing so consciously.
That's it. And that's it. And the people that watch and listen to this podcast, the thing I always focus on is making sure that they're getting value from this and from listening and watching. And so that is what we're talking to Arabella about, is that, you mentioned you do coaching and things like that. I think that this is so important. I think people neglect this whole, like I'm sure you hear all the time, I'm an introvert, so therefore I don't need this. Or I'm not naturally gifted. Like as a huge extrovert, as people know, right? And, people often go, oh, Chris, but that's your world. But I think that's an excuse. I think that, like you said, Arabella, is today, your personal brand is more important than ever. And I'm not saying you have to be an influencer or a star. What I'm saying is like you were saying, Arabella, when you go to conferences, when you go to events, when you present to a board, when you're trying to talk to your team, when you're trying to lead, when you're trying to gain inspiration, talking to customers, making sales, doing customer service, all of these places require clear and strong communication skills. And I feel like people often overlook that and they go, oh, I can talk. It's like when I do copywriting, people go, I can write. Like, what's the big deal?
Mm,
It's
mm,
not the same. And so,
mm.
Arabella, for everyone listening and watching, what are some practical things? I mean, you don't have to give away any of your secrets, but I'm saying, like, what are things that will spur people to go, that is something I need to look at in the new year, or, whatever they're doing at this time?
Yeah. Look, I think the question I ask of myself for things that I'm not good at is,
Yeah.
is it an issue, and does it help me thinking this way? So to think, for example, for me, it's organization in my home. Like, I recently met someone who's very organized in the space, like everything has a space. And I grew up very differently. I grew up in quite a vibrant, dynamic household. Mum had four
That
of
was
us.
delicately put.
That was so delicately put.
Yeah, it was really delicately put. You're like,
Hi,
Mum's gonna
Mum.
watch this. Yeah, yeah.
Love you so much. But, she was a journalist and a writer, and she had four of us under the age of 5.5. And I'm the youngest with three older brothers. So it was hectic and it was
Yeah.
chaos. And so I feel very comfortable in a nest-like environment. Whereas this other person grew up in a very structured environment where everything has its place. And so I've always wanted to be more like that. So I'm having to really challenge my own thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and limitations as to whether I can change and how to change, and what are the small steps that I can do in order to make that change important. So I think for people, if it's working for you, if you're communicating fine, if you get what you need, if you feel good most of the time, then that's great. If not, and you have an inkling that there is someone that you'd like to get on better with, or you could be leading your team better, or that you could be getting better results more easily, then those are all communication skills. I recently spoke to someone who said, I've just been promoted, and they're constantly promoted, but they know that they have to work on how to motivate their team. And this gets particularly difficult when teams are distributed and you're no longer able to see everyone in the same office.
Yeah.
So it is a
Huge.
question to ask yourself. If I am in a leadership role, I absolutely need to work on my communication skills. I mean, I'm a communication skills coach and trainer and consultant, and I'm constantly working on my skills. I'm learning how to have difficult conversations, how to set boundaries, how to be clear in the way I communicate, and communicate without shame, blame, or attack. So there's areas that all of us, even the most extroverted, confident people, need to work on.
That was subtle. You're very subtle. You're good. You're very good. You're showing me your skills.
I'm not sure how subtle that is, but the point being is no one grows up in a perfect environment where they're modeled the perfect level of communication. And so we're all learning together.
And I think that was great, Arabella. Like, and for me, as I said, like, I work with a lot of brands to help them articulate. And a lot of the times it's not personal branding, it's more like the company branding. But the principle remains the same, which is clarity, consistency, conviction, confidence, all of those great C words. It really, what it is making sure that you are practicing your communication and making sure that you're noticing, like you were saying, Arabella, having a good self-awareness around the fact that things might not be conveyed in the right way, and taking the time to really work on that. So from a practical sense, Arabella, how would someone strengthen their personal communication skills? Like, just as a general, is it like sitting down with a piece of paper and going, what do I stand for? What do I want to be? Is it that? Or is it like looking at meetings that are coming up? How do they do that?
It's a good question. And I think it starts with looking at what types of communication you need to have in your role. Do you run board meetings? Do you lead a team? Do you have sales conversations? Or do you need to influence people? Do you have to have difficult conversations? Do you have to give or receive feedback? Do you have to have coaching conversations? Like, what types of conversations do you have in your role? And people usually have about 5 to 10 that they usually do on a regular basis.
Oh, there you go.
So whether
the templates, is there? Like, as in they've got scenarios, common scenarios. Yeah, interesting.
And it's working out, okay, what is my structural formula for having that conversation? I don't know if you've read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
I got recommended that like 9 times by all these coaches.
It's a very dense book. I think I spent 2 weeks plowing through that one, a lot of stats and data. And he won the Nobel Peace Prize on behavioral economics. And what he says is that when you have a system that you follow, and you know this as well for your work, when you have a system, you're much more likely to consistently get good results.
Yeah.
Than if you're haphazard and random. And that includes your interpersonal relationships and conversations. I mean, as an example, years ago, I used to manage a women's gym. And it was
you've done it all, haven't you?
Yeah, back when I was an actress, and it was a chain program that had come out from United States, and we had a sales script that we had to do over the phone. And
Yep.
I thought, I'm not going to do a sales script. That's so naff. Why would I do that?
Yep.
And all these people would call up so ready to sign up to the gym, and my results would be haphazard. Sometimes they'd sign up and sometimes they wouldn't. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to try the script. Bam. Every single time I'd close the person. I think I closed
Wow.
99%. And it was less about what I was saying. And it was fully scripted, and you don't need to be fully scripted, but it was less about what I was saying and more about how confident I felt in having that conversation, because people respond to how you make them feel rather than what you say.
Correct. And I
So,
spoke to a psychologist doing a podcast like this, and she said that
yeah.
the minute that you like go too salesy, for instance, is the minute she said serotonin and all these kind of chemicals were happening in the brain that ends up causing resistance and all of that. So it's not just that's an interesting conversation, like you were saying, is a lot of those scripts and all of that help you avoid those psychological pitfalls as well.
Yeah. And even if you do look at the whole sales process, when you're having that sales conversation, the last part of the sales conversation, which happens over several conversations, depending on what you're selling and which stage the prospect is at. But the last question you ask is, where do you want to go from here? It's not, okay, let's book you in. There's no push in sales anymore. It should be that you have made them feel heard, understood. And what the research shows is that if you understand a person's problem, they feel like you fully understand it, then they assume you've got the answer.
Yes. Yes. I love this. And this is what I mean. So for everyone listening or watching, these are little hacks and showing you the importance of personal communications. And the idea is to reframe the thinking. It's not thinking, oh, this is something I need to learn like an academic. This is more like practical tips and recognizing the situation. Like I love what you said, Arabella, where you said people commonly have around 5 to 6 scenarios that they have to end up communicating with. And simple things like preparing some sort of framework around that can be a little way for you to gain more confidence around what you're doing. Like you were saying, you went from winging it to having a bit more structure, and that ended up giving you a lot of guidance, and you were closing things, which is fantastic.
Absolutely. It's interesting because if you look at what teams struggle with or people struggle with the most, it's giving and receiving feedback and having difficult conversations. And
Yeah.
when I go in and train teams or companies on how to give and receive feedback, they then have a framework and they have permission to give each other feedback. And everyone feels so much safer. They understand the benefits of it, but they have a step-by-step structure to follow, which takes all the angst out of it and gets down to what's really going on. So it's very powerful.
Yeah, agreed. Look, is there any last tips and tricks? You've made it very, very clear that personal communication. Look, for me, my opinion is going forward, it's only going to get more and more important to strengthen the way that you communicate. And it's not just voice, it's everything, right? Like it's the way that you are, act, behave, respond to situations and all of these kind of things that make up the way that you communicate. And I feel like as we get into this very digital AI driven environment where my prediction is that we're going to get a little bit lazy with the way that we communicate, simply because AI is giving us a silver bullet of a way. Well, no, actually, I'm going to rephrase that. It's not silver bullet. It looks like a silver bullet, but it isn't. And I feel like now more than ever, we need to be really getting strong with the way that we are communicating to other people who are the ones that are making decisions as well. Like if you're a salesperson, you're not making a sale with an AI bot, you're making a sale with a human, and a human requires certain things. And so I feel like now more than ever, we need to be clearer and confident with our communication skills. So Arabella, what are your final thoughts on this?
Yeah. So I suppose there's two parts to it. There's the individual and there's the group. And with the individual, you want to be as responsive as you can moment by moment to what's being presented by the other person or group of people. So how do I read this person and how do I respond in a safe, healthy way? And in order to do that, you need to be able to regulate your own emotions. You need to be able to know that you are okay, that you're enough, and that have ways of exiting that conversation if you don't feel safe, but know that you are responding moment by moment to what you're seeing in a calm, ideally centered and responsive way. With groups, however, I often get brought in to companies and they say, we just want to, we want to workshop on feedback, or we want to workshop on burnout, or we want to workshop on presenting. And what I do now is a diagnostic, and I go in and have a chat with the people and I find out what's really going on, because often as a leadership team, you're seeing one element, but once you have a conversation with all the people, you can quite clearly see what the major issues are and what the fastest way is to transform that team.
Excellent. Look, and that's what I think. I think it's like, I liked what you said with this, not just individual, it's also the group. So look, main takeaways are, it's all important to strengthen your personal communications more now than ever. Don't make excuses. I think that's another thing. It's like, it's not just, oh, I'm an introvert, or I don't like people, so therefore I shouldn't be doing this. Like, I think it is the worthwhile investment, and taking little steps. It's not about saying, all right, you don't come out one day as a completely different person. Right. It's like identifying where you are in your career, in your personal situations, and that kind of look at, maybe the first thing to do for everyone is to think, after you've watched this, is what are those 5 or 6 scenarios that are common in my situation that Arabella said most people have, and going, let's map those first. Like, how easy is that? Just a blank page out right now and go, what are those 5 to 6 situations that I commonly find myself in? Like, it could be taking a phone call from an internal staff member, with usually that is around a problem, taking a sales call, usually around the situation where they've already received the collateral and they're making a decision. Like, frame those situations and maybe rate yourself and think, how well do I find myself communicating in these situations, and how confident am I? And then maybe that's where you go, right, what steps do I need to take? Practical.
Yeah, and I have an app called Communication Guru with 5 to 8 minute videos looking at specific skills that people can use. And I'm constantly adding to that app. And there's lots of free content on there as well. So people can start to work out, what is it that I need to start working on?
Well, everyone jump on that, right? What's the website again?
Communication Guru, the app. It's in your app store.
An app store. Perfect.
Yeah,
thank you, Arabella. It's been a pleasure chatting with you guys. I'm sorry to throw you right in here, but thank you so much. I think everyone got a lot out of this, and stay tuned for the next episode, everyone. Thank you for joining me.